In this episode, we're going to be looking at the very first full council meeting of the season, where they crowned a brand new mayor. Well, she wasn't that new, we'd seen her before. If you may remember back to the Vexatious episode, where her very first go, she tried to have someone arrested by the police. That didn't go well. Anyway, I'll link to that video in the description below. Crowning a new mayor is quite a ceremony. I must say, I do dig the new security outfits, though I do wonder how they manage to scan people without setting off their scanners with all that metal they're wearing. So congratulations to Councillor Leslie Scott-Buttell on becoming the mayor. Curiously though, a week later she quit the Lib Dems to become an independent, so she could have complete impartiality, which the mayor is meant to do anyway, so it's quite interesting, which has left the Lib Dems in a rather awkward position, but we'll talk about their legitimacy to run the council all by their little selves in the next episode. And then things went from bad to worse. No sooner had Leslie resigned than half of Colchester's Lib Dem group resigns due to toxic culture. So more than half the committee which runs Colchester's Lib Dem party has resigned in a row over councillor discipline and a toxic culture. The Gazette can reveal. 6 out of the 11 Liberal Democrats on the Colchester Executive Committee, which has a say in how the local party is run, have resigned, including the chair, the vice chair and the secretary. We have a situation where a small number of elected councillors are holding the local party to ransom. Because of the numbers, we are running the administration with the support of Labour. These individuals threaten to resign as Lib Dem councillors if they don't get their own way, and senior members of the councillor group repeatedly appeased them to prevent them from leaving because of this. Another main reason was the toxicity within the councillor group. Oh dearie me. Sam McCarthy, ward councillor for Shrub End, said, "I focus on my ward of Shrub End and the forthcoming general election before anything else. I.e., I'm not going to dish the dirt, you'll have to ask someone else. So, it's all going on. I can't imagine for a minute who the alleged prima donnas are that threaten to quit every time they don't get their own way. Haven't a clue who it could possibly be, do you?" I will link to the Gazette article so you can read it in its entirety, and of course there's the comments where a lot of small children seem to be getting things out and waving them around at each other. I'll leave you to enjoy those on your own. But wouldn't it be interesting if those with a good conscience all quit their respective political parties and became independents? And if they could bury the hatchet, not in each other, they could all form one big group of independents and overthrow the toxic cultured Lib Dems. Now there's food for thought. But anyway, let's get on to the main meeting itself. Now, they don't normally vote for anything on the first meeting because it's all the pomp and ceremony of getting the new mayor in, but on this occasion they did. They had something very special they wanted to vote on, and that was the Have Your Say section of their meetings. Apparently, they're feeling they go on too long, because too many members of public are taking it upon themselves to come in and have a chat with them about all the things they're doing wrong, and for some reason they don't seem very keen on it. So they've got a whole new set of rules and regulations that they wanted to unroll to make sure meetings go smoother and were quicker. Well, I don't think anyone alive would disagree with wanting the meetings to go quicker. Let's give you a sample of the speeches where members of the public tried to persuade the council that they didn't really need to shut down the one opportunity people really have to go to the council.
I feel the need to express my concerns about the proposed changes to the Have Your Say sessions. While efficiency is important, these changes threaten the principle of openness, transparency and public engagement that are essential to our democracy. Firstly, limiting the number of public speakers to 8 per meeting restricts the diversity of voices the council hears. This cap could prevent many residents from participating, especially on important issues. Secondly, removing the right of reply for speakers reduces meaningful dialogue, and to reject questions deemed inappropriate adds too much subjectivity. a past full council meeting where so-called vexatious comments from a member of the public got him cancelled and the police called. Clear, transparent criteria should be established to prevent any bias and ensure all voices are heard fairly. These changes risk sacrificing public input for the sake of quicker meetings. Instead, we should explore alternative ways to streamline meetings without limited public participation. In conclusion, these proposed changes could stifle public participation and erode trust in the council. I urge the council to reconsider and seek solutions that maintain strong public engagement while managing meeting efficiency.
Thank you. Councillor King, could you respond, please?
It gives some assurance to you. There's been a lot of discussion inside the groups and across the chamber about how best to strike that balance. So you'll be pleased to hear, given your remarks, that in front of us will be later an amended proposal to retain the right of reply. I think there's a loss here of understanding. This is a meeting, business meeting in public, not a public meeting. The Constitution says 15 minutes. Over the last years, I think it'd be fair to say, in my time at least, that's lengthened out. And it's lengthened out because there is a welcome for public participation. But as it's lengthened out, we've found ourselves, some of us, and it's a joy being with each other, here to 10, 10:30, and our officers to 11. That's not the best basis on which to make decisions.
If I might make a suggestion, maybe answering the questions the first time round, and as you just pointed out, the meeting today should have started at 10:30.
Yes, excellent point, Cheryl, about answering the questions to begin with. Let's give you a small sample of what it is like dealing with the council, specifically the leader of the council, Councillor King. This is how he feels is the best way for us to communicate by email. Let's see if it is, shall we? So, as you may remember, Karina went in to inform the council cabinet of issues with fraudulent 5G safety certificates. And Councillor King said he would look into it and get back to her. And here's his response. I did not accept the public or wider safety conclusions you draw and could not comment on allegations of fraud without evidence, but undertook to provide a written response regarding the applications. Applications we receive from telecom masts must be supported, blah blah blah. We have no reason to suppose these are fictitious or fraudulent and have no means to challenge if the proposal or scheme as built accords with ICNIRP thresholds. Whilst I note your concerns about the identity of some applicants, the vast majority of these applications are submitted by large and respected telecoms companies. If you are aware of fraudulent ICNIRP certificates or any other fraudulent activity in respect of such applications, please provide the evidence. And then it was a whole load of blurb which, well, I'll put a copy of this in the Dropbox folder and you can read it in all its glory. So, Karina duly responds. So she starts out by asking him what research he has reviewed to draw his conclusions that make him not accept the wider public safety concerns, and asks him for any evidence of that. She also asks him whether he's read the ICNIRP guidelines. Nowhere does it say EMF radiation is safe, but it is unlikely to cause harm. These guidelines do not cover anyone with metal in their body. No one may claim with any authority the extent to which these people may be suffering additional harm as a result of EMF radiation. And then she goes on to give various different examples, and also links to the medical study by oncologist Lennart Hardell on the harms caused by 5G exposure that she'd mentioned in her speech. So she duly sends him the evidence with the links to the Companies House documentation that show these companies have been dissolved, an example of an application. She also sends him the evidence that the Planning Inspectorate has said it is down to the council to check the planning applications are valid. So please provide us with the evidence that contradicts the assertion that it is the council's responsibility. Otherwise, council is not acting in line with all the relevant legislation and government advice. If the officers have properly vetted the applications, they should be in a position to explain how it is that they have approved applications from dissolved companies. She goes on to remind him about his duty of care and the fact that insurance companies are refusing to offer liability cover. So with fraudulent certificates, who's going to be responsible? Will it be the council? And then a week later, we were sent this document by ACHES Group, which are the Adult Child Health and Environmental Support. And they have written a letter to go out to councils, and it includes the information from a retired police inspector made the following summary in relation to possible offences under the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act of 1981. Basically, the council could be in a lot of trouble because it is down to them to have checked these thingies. But I'll put this also in the Dropbox folder so you can read it for yourself. So, a lot of evidence, a lot of information, all verifiable. Can you guess what Councillor King's response was? Well, let me show you. Having spoken to officers, I confirm the following. As already described, we are not erecting or granting permission for the erection of macro cell masts for 5G or any other kind of radio. Small cells do not require planning permission beyond normal landlord-tenant relationships or approval from planning authorities and/or Historic England, where they are being affixed to listed buildings. I have attached the certificates of compliances issued by Nokia in relation to the radio equipment we will be deploying. It is important that you address questions about the radio spectrum allocation and licensing mechanisms to Ofcom, within whose competencies these matters fall. So completely ignoring all of the evidence she sent and giving us safety certificates from companies whose addresses include Finland and Florida. Completely ignoring the ones that they have passed using the fraudulent certificates. Now, on a quick search, we found at least 5, but there's probably more. Now, while I can appreciate that councillors may not be willing to consider alternative reasons for climate change, they should at least be able to tackle dealing with basic administrative errors, which this has been. They haven't checked, and there's a problem. If companies are self-certifying with a certificate using a company that's been dissolved, there is no comeback to them. There is no possible way of getting compensation should anyone become injured. And they're rolling 5G out everywhere without having done safety tests. So no one knows what is going to happen to people. So yet another email will have to be sent back. So who exactly is wasting whose time here? This is a very straightforward and simple issue, and it required a very straightforward and simple response. Not all this obfuscation. All they need to do is write back saying, "Dear Karina, thank you so much for drawing our attention to this. We'll look into it and make sure that no more masks are passed using fraudulent ICNURP certificates. Lots of love and kisses, Colchester Council." That's all it required. Okay, the love and kisses would have been nice, but not necessarily. We would have accepted it without. So there you go. That's a sample of what it's like dealing with the council. Tedious. Utterly tedious. Not to mention breaching their duty of care. I'm beginning to see why so many people refer to Councillor King as Dodgy Dave on Twitter. It's a nickname that I don't think is going to be going anytime soon, especially if he carries on like this. Now, Lance from the Peacekeepers wrote to all of the councillors the week before, outlining why he thought it was a bad idea to change the Have Your Say. So then he went along in person to add to what he'd said in the email. If you'd like to read through all of these, I will link to them in the description in the video, because he's put it on his Substack, which is very good, by the way.
Thank you for entertaining me and the other members of the public at what I hope is not the last of the Council's unimpeded Have Your Say sessions. I do not doubt that each and every one of you have read the email that I sent last Friday in respect of the ardent desire of someone within this council to discriminate against the public in being able to freely bring their grievances here. Now, I have attended what most normal people would likely regard as being too many Have Your Say sessions already. And for the most part, those sessions of public engagement are over in a matter of minutes. They are hardly consequential in forestalling council business. Indeed, my experience has led me to believe that they are rarely consequential in any respect. Now, rather than reiterate the entirety of my email and in the pursuit of brevity, I would simply request that council give due consideration to the evidential basis upon which the proposed changes are being made. Anything else being, well, both irrational and subject to the embarrassment of challenge. So, if you're individually considering supporting this constitutional change, which will inevitably forestall the paying public from freely voicing their concerns here, should you not at least consider the evidence upon which the claimed need to enforce such a retrograde step is being proposed?
Thank you. Councillor King.
Thank you very much for your email and for your remarks today. We will leave it to individual members to weigh what they've seen and your remarks today. And in your email, I will just say one more time, you've heard it before. We're not discriminating or rejecting public participation. We're just striking a new balance over twice the length of the constitutional one to which we're supposed to be working. So that's what it is, a better balance, a better order and a better use of time.
Just any further comments?
Yeah, just a quick rejoinder. Yeah, absolutely. I understand exactly what it's saying. I think the word you were missing there was control. However, all I would suggest is that you point to instances where the public, God forbid, overrun for a small period of time. It's relatively few and far between. On that basis, what I would suggest is that in the pursuit of an evidential determination, why not have this debate forestalled until such time as you know exactly how long and how often it is that the public have the audacity to overrun? I don't think that's unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. You've indicated.
I'm not going to give you a long list. We could, but that's not appropriate. But as I'm reminded by colleagues, one example, and there's several, would be a scrutiny session of 90 minutes worth of public engagement. That's not 15 minutes. That's not about individuals overrunning, it's about the collective mass of people, often from the same group with similar views, pushing home a point, and they're entitled to a cause and impeding others, right? Keeping people waiting for the business for which they've come for an hour. So this is about, it's not a conversation here, Lance. This is about you said your piece. This is about a better balance.
Agreed. In the pursuit of balance evidence.
Now, with regards to Lance's email, out of the 51 councillors, only 2 responded. Firstly, there was Councillor Willits saying that he also did not agree with the changes, because he can see it shoots themselves in the foot when the councillors want to have their say. The other response was from the leader of the Red Team, Julie Young, and that was very telling, that she can't indicate which way her group is going to vote. Now, he wasn't emailing them as a group, he was emailing them as individuals. But obviously they're not, are they? They all have to do as they are told. Now, I have quite a few very helpful suggestions of how councillors everywhere can speed up their meetings, which I will share with you after Sir Bob.
No idea where this bright idea's come from to curtail public participation. What I see here is a leader and a cabinet who don't have confidence in answering questions in public. They need 24 to 36 hours, if not longer, notice of what the question is, so as they can get officers to help them. If they're not up to answering questions in the public, you have to question why they hold those positions. I've had many years' experience of asking questions in another place. If you think this is going to stifle me and stop me or curtail me, big mistake. Thank you.
So there is no suggestion, either in past, present or future engagement, that this is about you. This is about the relationship between the council conducting its full business in a way that gives time and attention to that business as we should, making a priority for that, while still providing time for public speakings at the beginning of that meeting.
The council used to meet every 6 weeks. It now only meets 4 times a year. There's a limit on when members of the public can come and ask questions. And I just finish on this point. Where did this bright idea come from? Has this come from the leader of the council, or has it come from officers?
Thank you, Sir Bob. Before I invite Councillor King to move the motion, I would just like to say I, in the role of Mayor, have stepped back politically. But my understanding that this was put together and it was sent to all group leaders and had the backing of all the different groups before it got to this stage. Am I correct in saying that, Councillor King? Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to ask those voting against and those abstaining.
So there we go. What a surprise. Not a single one of them
Thank you,
voted
the motion's
against it.
carried.
And the councillors that voted for this are really showing their true colours. And we knew it was coming, which is one of the reasons why we started this YouTube channel, so to make sure we always have a voice. Now, if they do actually genuinely want to speed up their meetings, as someone who has sat through hundreds upon hundreds of hours of them, I have noticed certain patterns in their meetings. So allow me to share a few suggestions, if I may. Firstly, stop thanking everyone every 5 minutes. There's been times when it's felt more like being at an awards ceremony at the Oscars than it has a council meeting.
So that's been fantastic working with them. So I do think, thanks to Chris and Andrew, we have started to present our papers in a bit of a better way. So I thank Chris and the team for that. I want to thank David as well as leader for ensuring that open process has happened, even beyond just the members' briefings with those leaders alumni as well, and bringing in a fantastic asset in a person being Patricia Barry. She's got fantastic expertise. I think everyone cross party has been impressed with her so far. So thank you to officers, thank you to Richard Block for that, putting that table together in response to the leaders' alumni budget. So things have got more transparent, and I thank councillors for their comments earlier, and do direct them to Chris to my left here, because he is absolutely championing that and leading on that, and I thank you genuinely, Chris, for that.
And whilst it's lovely that people show gratitude for jobs well done, this has been a little extreme at times. So much so that we at Council Watch were seriously considering purchasing a t-shirt for Councillor Corey with "thank you" written across it, so that instead of spending at least half an hour each meeting thanking everybody for being born and turning up and doing their job, he could just have it under his jacket with "thank you" written across it, and then he could just flash his little thank you whenever the mood took him. Because once one person starts the thanking, then everybody else feels they must join in. I don't know if it's in council officers' contracts, you must publicly thank me profusely or I refuse to come to work the next day, but whatever their reason is, stop it. If you're really thankful, tell them in the break in your own time. That would save a lot of time. Secondly, do have a think about what you're likely to need to say in the meeting before the meeting. There is so much waffle and hot air that goes in to a lot of these meetings. That is taking up at least an hour while people pontificate on what to say. If you haven't got anything constructive to say, don't say it at all. Also, just say what you mean. Stop beating around the bush, trying not to upset or offend anyone and being politically correct. Just come out with what you need to say. There's been some meetings, there's been so much hot air and waffle, I've ended up having to summarise because it's been impossible to edit my way through it. And finally, if any councillors say, "I'm going to be brief" before they start speaking, I suggest you all get up and run out, because they won't be. Especially if it's Councillor Gocher. Anyway, they're just a few suggestions that would speed up your meetings no end. In part 2 of this episode, you'll see another 3 speeches. We got a corker from Sir Bob telling the council how illegitimate they are, yet again, and also a new speaker, and Brian from the Peacekeepers had a little something to say as well. In this episode, we're actually going to give Councillor King the final say. In his own words, why there has to be less public engagement. And this will be completely unedited, and you, the viewers, can decide for yourselves if it really is the general public that's taking up all the time and making these meetings excruciatingly long.
Item 5, have your say. Now, if we would have your say at the end of the meeting, there'd be a smaller crowd. Just the way of these things. I don't know why, because we know we're fascinating. So what we have is a room full of members and the public, and we take have your say seriously. We do our best to entertain it. I've got to say to you that is at the expense of us and our business often. So I want to be very clear about this. Everybody should have been told when they arrived, but let me just sort of spell this out. Exceptionally, unless we really do lose a lot of time, I'll give time for each of those listed. But I have to say, you must keep to the 3-minute limit, right? So it's 2 minutes, a bell, and a minute. If you can keep it to less than 3, you'll be doing a service to us. You'll be doing a service to those waiting in line. And there are, as you can look around and see, quite a few of you. Unless somebody else puts a hand up now, in fact, no, I'll be clear. I'll only take those who've notified that they want to speak. I know that on some subjects, there's a couple of speakers, so I respectfully will ask you to come and speak on that subject, and then we'll give you an answer for the 2 or the 3 on that subject. I hope everyone understand that's efficient in time. It saves us repeating ourselves to each of you and have you afterwards leaving and thinking, why didn't they say that to me? Right? So we have to have some discipline tonight. If we run too far on time, then I will just curtail it. So it's down to us all. So members of cabinet, we need to keep it brisk. I'm very happy that we acknowledge and come back to you, and that's the fallback for us if time just runs away. We've got an awful lot of business. The visiting members, can I ask, given that all of these subjects have been through a mixture of governance and audit and scrutiny and several times, and informal and formal, as well as full council, that we can't just bear that in mind. So on the general have your say, the same 3-minute limit applies, as we all know who have come to the table. But if you could bear in mind that we've been through this a few times before, I don't stop ever the right to come and speak, but can ask you to bear in mind time. All right. So the first speaker in the order I have in front of me is Melina Spendadalki. Melina. Now, Melina, you've been here before, so you have. So please make yourself comfortable, press and turn yourself on, so to speak. 2 minutes the bell, yes, and then a minute to close. No longer, please.